Welcome to Wealth with Love. This is the place to be if you're passionate about building wealth with love in your marriage. So, lessons from our 9 years of marriage.
Oh, yeah. We've learned a lot in the past 9
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's still loads to learn. But you know what, guys? Start off with disclaimer. Marriage really is a beautiful thing. It really is a beautiful thing. But like with anything, you have to grow through a lot. As you build in your marriage, you learn a lot.
Yeah.
You grow through a lot. So yeah, I know a lot of people out there will say, oh, marriage is tough, marriage is hard. There are times that are tough, there are times that are hard, but marriage also is beautiful. There are times when you're so happy and things are going well, but it's a lesson. You learn together, you build together, you grow together. So yeah.
So one of the lessons out for me on that back of that is that marriage is what you make it. I think before we got married, I remember like I'd be speaking to a lot of people about like what's it like being married. And I'm Zimbabwean, which is a Southern African country, and it's kind of tradition that in that period, in that leading up period to your wedding, you kind of spend time with the uncles in the family, and they kind of give you advice and prepare you for the journey, so to speak. And all of them were scaremonger you. All of them were like, marriage is hard.
Is hard.
And
be
it's
a
just
man.
like, you need to learn to be a man. Are you ready for this responsibility? That sort of thing. And it's just like make you feel like you're about to go into war, sort of thing. Like, okay, I need to be mentally prepared. And then as well, we're Christians, and so the same conversations be going on in the church kind of environment. People in church being like, oh, the Bible says this is how a husband should be. So And I think like what that ended up happening was I entered into marriage almost like with this idea of we need to live up to this standard of sorts. But over time, I definitely learned that no, marriage is what we make it. Like our marriage is what we've made it, basically. If we are going to have this, marriage where I'm the man of the house, you do as I say, then I've done that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or if we have a marriage that's kind of like, no, it doesn't matter, male, female, we're both partners here, and we'll both equally carry the weight of this household. That's also a decision that we make in how we approach marriage. So for me, the lesson really is marriage is what you make it. And if you've made your marriage kind of not how you wanted it to be, maybe it's time to rebuild.
It's up to you to change it.
Yeah.
It really is up to you to change it. So one of the lessons I've learned is all to do with boundaries. And, I can liken it to a house. Just make it simple. When you leave your house to go to work or to go out, to go on holiday or whatever, you will always make sure that your door is locked. Like you won't leave and just leave your door open for the sake of leaving it open. And you won't leave and leave your windows open, door open, everything open. Why do you lock your house? Because you don't want anyone just coming into it, and you don't want anyone just coming through your windows and stuff, but you want to protect what's in your house. You want to protect everything within your house, right? And that's very similar with marriage. You have to have boundaries. It's so important to have boundaries. Within the marriage, you can have boundaries when it comes to your finances. You can have boundaries when it comes to family and friends. And I feel like if you elect to put in the right boundaries when you get married, hey, anyone and anything can come into your marriage and cause conflict between you and your husband or you and your wife simply because you failed to put in the right boundaries. An example of that one for us is a lot of the times when we do stuff, if we're going to involve family or family is going to get involved, we'll talk about it beforehand. A simple one, when my mom comes over to our house, Tanda's already in the know, like, Linda's mom's coming over. I know she'll be here for this many days. She's coming to watch Zayn and stuff. He already knows that. Why? Because it's a boundary. We both need to be very much aware of what's going on, especially when you're involving family or you're involving friends or things to do with money. And when it comes to money, you could simply have a boundary of, okay, let's agree that we can spend as much as we want up until this amount before we speak to each other or before we consult each other. Why? It's a boundary. You don't want to just hurt the other person or cause unnecessary conflict within your relationship. So that I think that was a big one for me, and it's still a big one because we are building as a couple. And if anything, I want us to be married for the rest of our lives or as long as we live. So I want to make sure that the right boundaries are in place to help us get.
Right. Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Another lesson that I learned for me is that there's a shift that happens when you get married, and that's that your marriage becomes number one, right? So for those of you who are Christians, you would have heard this before, where it says, a man shall leave mother and father, and then become one with his wife. And I think like that verse is said a lot in weddings.
Yeah.
And we all celebrate, yeah, of course, like this is great. I'm gonna leave my mother and father, and me and my wife become one. But I think what's often not expressed
Right.
clearly enough, in my opinion, is the fact that that process of leave one household to build a new household means that this new household, that you're now my number one. It's not a case of like, okay, like I love my wife, but my mom is
My
number
mom
one.
still comes first, yeah.
It's and for some people, it's anybody, right? So for some of you, it could be a father, or it could be a brother, it could be an uncle, it could be friends. That's true,
yeah.
right? And I think there is a shift that happens, and it's not instant, granted, but there is an understanding that to say, okay, before I was married, so and so and so and so were like my priority. But now that I'm a married man, I'm a married woman, we're in a relationship now, we're a married couple, the priorities have shifted.
Yeah.
It's almost like your number one person now is your husband or your wife. And the funny thing is, to people who are like not married, they're like, oh, of course, like you don't need to say that.
Yeah.
That's obvious. Of course your wife is number one, or your husband is number one. But actually, this plays out in a scenario where like, who do you turn to for advice, or who do you turn to make a decision with, or who would you like, whose feelings would you protect, I guess, or who would you prioritize? I don't know, things of that nature.
Or even
in
like
marriage.
when, for example, you've got someone who's like your best friend before you got married saying to you, oh Tando, I've got a party going, it's my birthday, and I've got like a guys outing going on this weekend. You need to make sure you're there. That's the motive. Be there. But then now you're like, wait, I'm also married and my wife's got like a dinner date planned this weekend. So now you're caught in the two. But then your friend's like, but we've been best friends since we were children. You know what I mean? Like, then what do you do?
Yeah, of course, have the conversation. But I think that's a great example, because then some people will be like, well, that's my boy, so I'm going, without even having a conversation. And that shows you where the priorities lie, and that kind of explains what I was trying to say. So that's, for me, was a big lesson, for sure.
Another big lesson for me really has been assumption is not revelation. Just because I assume that, okay, this is what Tanda thinks, or I'm sure Tanda thinks this about this, so I'll just go with that. That will cause you a lot of problems in your relationship. That will cause you a lot of problems in your marriage, because just because you assume something, it doesn't mean that's the truth. Just because you assume something, it doesn't mean that's what is. And I realize this a lot, where I'm like, well, I've always dealt with this certain situation this way.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's how he deals with it as well. I'm sure it's fine if we do it the way I've always dealt with it. I've now sat there and assumed that my way of dealing with things is Tanda's way of dealing with things, so it should be fine. And that was, I feel like that was a hurdle for us in marriage, because I overthink, guys. Like, I'm a thinker, so I process a lot of my stuff in my head without really talking about it. So then by doing so, I then also sometimes think, because I do that, that's what he does as well, so it's fine. But over the years, I've then learned that actually, no, if I am thinking something, let me go ask him, like, Tando, is this what you think as well? Is this how you feel as well? Is this your view on this situation as well? To then find out what he thinks. Because by doing so now, I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe you may not agree with my view of this, or you agree with it. But guys, assumption is not revelation. Don't just assume. Have a conversation, speak to each other, and find out. Even when it comes to doing things, you may think, oh, Tando did that because of A, B, C, and D. But let me go talk to you. But why did you do that? Let me understand more of your reasoning behind this decision that you made. Why did you do that? Assumption is not revelation.
And that kind of links to the thing I was thinking, actually, which is that for me, I learned that I needed to learn to do what works for you and not what I wanted. So a very simple example here could be birthday celebrations.
Yeah.
So I prefer experiences to physical gifts, for example. And so what would happen is, on your birthday, I would effectively focus on like, oh, let's do an experience. Let's go out. Let's go for the weekend here, staycation there, whatever. But like, I would do all of that, and then she would say to me, okay, but what did you buy me?
Where's the gift at?
Where's the gifts? I'm like, well, this is the gift. I mean, look at this hotel. Like, we're just driven 3 hours to get here, and I'm just taking you to some restaurant where we just paid £300 for a meal. Like, what do you mean? Where's the gift?
Like, I like the simple things in life, guys. You could get me like something that I really love, and we don't have to go away to this extravagant thing, and I'm happy type of thing.
But you want physical gifts, basically, right? Whereas for me, I'm like, yeah, physical gifts are nice, but I'd rather you take me out type of thing. So, but the lesson for me was I shouldn't then kind of project what I want to think that's how you want it.
Yeah.
And the same vice versa, right? I shouldn't then expect you to give me what I want without expressing it to you.
Yeah.
And so I think, the lesson here is don't just assume, coming back to what you was just saying, don't assume you'd be like, oh, my partner will like what I like. Listen, you love each other, of course, you're together, that's good. But you need to learn to understand what your partner wants and give them what they want, even though to you might be thinking, that's just not my thing, like I'm not into that. So that's a big lesson I learned.
It's very interesting because recently I was reading a book on marriage, and they're talking a lot about serving each other. And they're like, if you want a lot of peace in your relationship, make sure you serve each other. And one way of doing that is like love languages. Know each other's love languages. Know what your husband or your wife likes, and then do that. Because by doing what they like, you will make them happy. You will please them. But by doing what you like, you're gonna have conflict and issues and problems and stuff. So learn to serve each other. Basically, that's what I learned from it. So that also leads me to another lesson that I learned. So I've learned that as much as we love each other and as much as we are married, we are still two very different people. Case in point, you're a man, I'm a woman. We're already different. Your anatomy is very different to mine. We are different. And I think a lot of the times we come into marriage, or we'll be thinking, oh my God, like, okay, now I'm married. We have to do everything together. We have to be together all the time. What he likes is what I like. Well, like all those things. But that's not the case. It's actually so beautiful when you guys are both growing within the marriage, but it's okay for you to like different things. For example, Tanda's into music, he's into instruments, he's into playing instruments, but it's not my thing. It's not the type of thing that I do, but I support him in that. And I understand that that's his thing and something that he enjoys doing. So my thing is like, I'm into things like bookkeeping, guys. Like when you put a spreadsheet with numbers and like, bookkeeping and stuff like that, like my face lights up. I get so happy. And that's not Tando's thing. But he has come to understand that that's what I like. And he supports me in that. So I guess the lesson here is that understand that you are still two different people that may have different hobbies and like different things. And that's okay. Support each other in that. Build each other in that. Grow together in that. So yeah.
The final lesson for me is that I'll share in regard to 9 years of marriage is that it's important to have a dream that you're both passionate about in your relationship, particularly around your future. Like, what is it that you're aiming to accomplish and achieve? We've had seasons in our life where we didn't have anything. We were just, I guess, working, paying bills, and just like doing whatever on the weekends. And then, that shifted very quickly when we had the dream that we were both passionate about. We wanted to reach it. We wanted to go for it. All of a sudden, we feel like, we're in this thing called life together. And it started, I think, when we were looking to buy a house. And I think we saw the power of that. Like, we were so united. It was unbelievable. Like, no, we're not doing that because we're looking to buy a house. But of course, we're looking to buy a house. Like, that's our vision. That's our plan. And we talk about that a lot. And I think that's quite important because it's easy to fall into the trap of just existing. And just doing the day-to-day stuff. And then you realize that in your relationship, like you're also drifting apart because you're not trying to like build together your future, if you get what I'm trying to say. You kind of fall into the just repetitive stuff, but like have a think about like what it is that we want to accomplish in our future. Where do we want to go? Where do we want to be 5 years from now, and things of that nature. So for me, that's the final thing I'd love to leave you guys with. But it'd be interesting to know, for those of you who have been married longer than us, let us know in the comments, what lessons have you learned in your marriage that you pass on to us that we haven't touched on ourselves, or maybe we haven't experienced yet. But if you are also a newlywed, we'd love to hear from you. Like, it'd be interesting to see your perspective on this as well. And hopefully you found these lessons very useful. We'll see you and speak to you
next time
on the next one.